These are the 5 rookie wide receivers with the most league-winning upside. Number 1 should come as no surprise, Marvin Harrison Jr. The stars are aligned perfectly for this guy. Marquise Brown is out of the picture. He leaves behind a vacated 120 targets, who should basically go to him and Trey McBride, who I'm also very high on, but I think Harrison Jr. should hit the ground running. The Cardinals' receiving room currently consists of Michael Wilson, newly brought in Zay Jones, and Greg Dortch. No disrespect to any of them, but they're not going to be challenging Harrison in any type of way. The Cardinals have been in dire need of a consistent offensive weapon since DeAndre Hopkins left, and I think they got it in Harrison. They also drafted Trey Benson, who I'm excited about, but this team is going to be built around Harrison Jr.'s talents. He also has a good quarterback in Kyler Murray, and I really think he has a good chance to eclipse the 150 target mark this year. At 6'4", 205, there really is no weakness in his game. He's a vertical threat, he can run routes with the best of them, and he has great hands. And what I like about him a lot is that he's proven to be quarterback proof in college. We saw that he had a great year with CJ Stroud when he had over 1,260 yards and 14 touchdowns, but he did the same thing the following year when Stroud left. He had over 1,200 yards and 14 touchdowns again, and also got the Bolitnikoff Award. And if recent history is any indicator, it's that these Ohio State wide receivers' games translate to the NFL pretty well. Look at Chris Olave, Garrett Wilson, and even to a lesser degree Jackson Smith and Jigba. And just rookies in general. Look at Jamar Chase, Justin Jefferson, they all hit the ground running. So while spending a second-round pick may seem steep, it may prove to be very worthwhile. I could easily see Harrison Jr. be the best rookie receiver of the bunch that I mentioned. We know Murray can produce good finishes for top wide receivers. Even an aging DeAndre Hopkins got 9 targets per game during his tenure with the team. He also got nearly 80 yards a game and half a touchdown a game. So I have no doubt that Harrison's going to get close to 10 targets a game right out of the gates, and I can see him getting better as the season goes on. If you draft him, feel good about it. Next up, if you're not able to get Harrison Jr., you can get the next best thing in Malik Nabers. Nabers is also walking into a great situation. He's going to a team that has been desperate for a wide receiver threat for a while. They've definitely tried drafting some guys and bringing some guys through free agency, but it hasn't quite worked out. And at this point, they have guys like Jalen Hyatt, Wan'Dale Robinson, Darius Slayton, Isaiah Hodgins, who are all talented in their own right, but none of them are the same caliber player that Nabers is. And Nabers should be an absolute target hog this year. I mean, Saquon Barkley and Darren Waller are no longer on the team, leaving about 180 targets up for grabs, and I think he's going to get the ball fed to him often and early. And if the early reports from training camp are any indication, it's that this team is going to be built around this guy's skill set. He apparently hasn't dropped many balls, and I feel like he's almost giving OBJ vibes. He's from LSU, he's a fast twitch, freaky athlete that can take a slant to the house, can catch the ball over the top, and can pretty much do everything in the receiving game. If there is one thing I'm a little concerned about, it's quarterback play. Daniel Jones is not very inspiring, but we've seen receivers have good seasons even with dismal quarterbacks, and I think this will be no different. He's currently being drafted in the 5th round of 12-team PPR leagues, which I think is actually a bargain. I can see his stock going up as the preseason goes on. And honestly, I wouldn't sleep on his running mate from LSU last year either, Brian Thomas Jr., who led the FBS with 17 touchdowns last year. He got drafted by the Jaguars, and he's a name to keep an eye on as well. The last thing I like about Nabers is the fact that Daniel Jones is in a contract year. He's going to do everything he can to make sure his numbers look good. And it wouldn't be surprising to see Nabers get close to a 30% target share. Even if the team isn't good, I can see Nabers doing a lot of damage in garbage time, which for fantasy purposes doesn't matter. We just want volume and opportunity. Moving right along, let's talk about Keon Coleman. Coleman's also another exciting prospect. He's walking into a pretty good situation as well. Stephon Diggs is no longer on the team, and he leaves behind 160 targets. And I think Dalton Kincaid will be the primary beneficiary, but the receivers have to absorb some of that. And Coleman has the build to be the X receiver right out of the gates. I do like Khalil Shakir, and I do like that they brought in Curtis Samuel and Mac Hollins, but they're not the same talent level as Coleman. Coleman was drafted with the first pick of the 2nd round for a reason, and I think they intend to deploy him right away. At 6'4", 215, he definitely profiles as a player that should get a lot of red zone looks and should get a lot of 50-50 balls, which is something I really like. Josh Allen loves to throw the ball. The Bills had the 5th most pass attempts of any team last year, and I don't see that changing this year. I do expect James Cook to have another good season, but this is still going to be a pass-first team. Another facet of Coleman's game that I really like is the fact that he's a pretty good special teamer. He was an excellent returner in college, and I could see him being involved in that phase of the game, even if it's in a small capacity. Currently, he's being drafted in the 9th round, and I feel like that's pretty appropriate. If you can deal with some initial growing pains, he could definitely pay off as the season goes on. I don't think it'll be long before he separates himself from the group and becomes the leading receiver for this core. Next, let's talk about lagged McConkey. McConkey, like the first 3 players, is walking into a pretty great situation. The Chargers no longer have Keenan Allen, Mike Williams, or Austin Eckler, and that leaves behind around 420 targets that are up for grabs. And someone's got to catch the ball, even if the Chargers are more run-focused this year. What instills confidence in me is the fact that the Chargers seem to have a lot of faith in McConkey already. They signed him to a 4-year, nearly $10 million deal, which is the record for the 34th pick of the draft, and I think they intend to use him right away. Currently, they have Quentin Johnston, DJ Chark, and Josh Palmer, who are all good, but I do think McConkey has an opportunity to separate himself pretty early on. I think he's going to be somewhat of a PPR cheat code as the season goes on. The touchdowns may not be there as much, but he should definitely catch a lot of balls. Circling back to the Chargers being more run-centric this year, that's probably my one concern for McConkey. Jim Harbaugh brought in Greg Roman to run the offense, so you know they're going to run the ball like they did in Baltimore. Ironically enough, they also brought in J.K. Dobbins and Gus Edwards, so this is almost like a Baltimore team 2.0. I wouldn't be surprised to see this team be very run-heavy, and for even Justin Herbert to be involved in the run game quite a bit more. And that's another thing that gives me some concern. Herbert currently has plantar fasciitis, and I know he's on the sideline for the next couple of weeks to heal up, but this is a type of injury that can linger on for the entire year. So his health is a question mark at this point, and that could affect McConkey as well. Nonetheless, given his opportunity and potential volume, I think him going in the 9th round is actually pretty appropriate. I might even take a chance on him a little bit earlier, just because I think he's going to be used in the slot a lot, and he should get a ton of catches like I mentioned. Last, I want to talk about the potential Tyreek Hill replacement in Kansas City. They've been searching for this guy for a while, and I think they may have found it in Xavier Worthy. The Texas star definitely seems to fit the role on paper. He broke the record for the fastest 40 time at a combine, running a 4.21, and I think that should translate well. My concern is that he's a little bit undersized at 5'11", 165. And the fact that the Kansas City Chiefs just won a Super Bowl dinking and dunking. Let's not also forget that the Chiefs brought in Marquise Brown, and they also still have Rashee Rice and of course Travis Kelce, and they still have Kadarius Toney and McCole Hardman, who should have some role on this team. They also have Isaiah Pacheco, who I think will still have a very prominent role in this offense, so it's kind of unknown how big Xavier Worthy's role will be right out of the gates. I think he's more of a WR3 that's a boom-bust player at this point, but he has a pathway to be like a Tank Dell in my opinion. I think if you invest in him, you may have to wait for the rewards, but he could hit the ground running. He definitely has that type of speed, and I do personally think that Andy Reid likes having an offense built around explosives rather than the dink and dunk style game that they've played. So they're going to get back to trying to throw the ball over the top. Obviously, they have Patrick Mahomes, so they're more than capable of doing it. I just think it comes down to the individual in terms of how much risk you're willing to accept for fantasy purposes. He's currently being drafted in the 8th round, which is actually a little bit steep in my opinion. If you can wait until the 9th or even the early 10th, I would try to target him there. Of course, if you're an aggressive fantasy player, taking him in the 8th isn't the worst thing in the world. Those are the 5 rookie wide receivers with the most upside. Thank you so much for watching. Please subscribe and let me know which rookie wide receivers you think will hit the ground running in the comments below.